In this video, we're going to be talking about a debate I had with the world's most advanced AI, ChatGPT, on the topic of NHS privatisation. But this isn't just any ordinary debate. This is a showdown between man and machine, and the results may surprise you. First, let's give a bit of background on the history of AIs debating humans. There are AI systems for debating, but they are still noticeably subhuman in their abilities. Some examples are Debate M1 and Mitsuku, but the most advanced system is by IBM called Project Debater. In 2018, it was pitted against Harish Natarajan, who's a European debating champion and got to the final of the world's competition. Whilst Project Debater could present arguments against him, it ultimately lost because it wasn't able to convincingly reply to his rebuttal about the weaknesses of the arguments it was making. But is it just a matter of time until it can? And that brings us to ChatGPT, the AI that we're talking about today. ChatGPT is one of the most advanced AI language models in the world, and it's been trained on a vast amount of text data. From a few prompts, it can give you recipes, roleplay as a marketer or essay writer consulting for you, and as we're going to see, it can also make speeches. So I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to see if it could hold its own against a human in a debate on one of the most controversial topics in the UK, NHS Privatisation. Before we dive into the debate, let's quickly go over the format. We're using the British Parliamentary style of debate, which has 4 speakers on each team. The first 2 speakers introduce the case for each side and try to rebut the previous arguments. The third speaker tries to introduce new lines of argument to take the debate in a different direction. And the fourth speaker summarises the debate in favour of their team, trying to deconstruct the opposing case. Having this kind of format means that an audience listening to an issue really gets a good exploration of the issues and the main points of clash in the debate. So now that we've explained the format, let's dive into what actually happened. To start the debate, I asked GPT to give a British parliamentary style speech in favour of NHS privatisation. Here are some of the snippets from the first 2 speeches and my replies.
Madam Chair, honourable members of the opposition, and fellow members of the government, I stand before you today to propose a bold and necessary change for the future of healthcare in the United Kingdom, the privatisation of the National Health Service. The National Health Service, as we know it, is struggling to meet the demands of an ever-growing and ageing population. Waiting times are increasing, resources are stretched thin, and patients are not receiving the care they need in a timely manner. It's clear that the current system is no longer sustainable.
Firstly, a private system would concentrate health spending on exactly that part of the population that least needs healthcare, the rich and worried well. This would drain potential resources that could be used fixing our NHS.
Furthermore, the first opposition speaker has argued that the profit motive would conflict with the motive to care for patients. However, I would argue that private companies would be held accountable by their customers and would have an incentive to provide high-quality care in order to attract and retain patients. We should consider all options and not be ideologically opposed to privatisation.
The second proposition speech made a key concession that strengthens our case and weakens their own. They admitted that long wait times in the NHS are not an inherent feature of our system, but a global challenge. It underestimates the tendency of privatisation to create perverse incentives that will destabilise the healthcare system. Then, the third speech came, and oh my, it sent me reeling.
The second opposition speaker has argued that long wait times in the NHS are not an inherent feature of the public system, but a global challenge. While this is true, I would like to point out that privatisation has been successfully implemented in other countries and has led to significant improvements in wait times and access to care. For example, in countries like Germany, the Netherlands, and Switzerland, where healthcare systems have been partially or fully privatised, patients have reported shorter wait times and greater satisfaction with their care.
It was refuting all of my arguments and backing it up with evidence. My back was up against a wall now. I had to think of a response, but it had presented a really good argument. I sent my friend a copy of the debate. While she agreed with me on the issues, she actually found the AI's arguments more succinct than mine. I have to say, I felt gutted. My reputation as a debating enthusiast, never really there to start with, was now in tatters. I was tired. I couldn't do it. I had to sleep. But morning came and I had an idea. NHSX and the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Programme are both initiatives to increase innovation and access to alternative funding within the NHS. This means that there is no need to risk the harms of privatisation to enjoy the proposed benefits. We also agree that in Germany, the Netherlands and Switzerland there are shorter waits, but correlation is not causation, and more evidence is needed to attribute this observation to privatisation. In fact, these countries also have strong public health systems and low levels of economic inequality compared to the UK. Regarding regulation, a regulatory body is only able to take action on a fraction of the infringements that happen. Some companies make it their strategy just to pay fines when they break the rules, because that works out better for them. Then the whip speeches, the final speeches, came and went.
In conclusion, Madam Chair, the privatisation of the National Health Service is a necessary step towards a more efficient, innovative and accessible healthcare system for all citizens of the United Kingdom.
In summing up this debate, we must ask, did the proposition do enough to prove its case? We say no for the following reasons. First, we didn't hear an explanation of why private companies would be more efficient, except that they had more access to funding. So who do you think was more convincing? I decided to ask ChatGPT who presented the stronger arguments, who deconstructed arguments better. Here's what it said. From the arguments presented in the debate, I cannot find any weak arguments made by the opposition. The opposition presented a well-rounded argument, highlighting the potential downsides of privatising healthcare and pointing out the risks of privatisation, such as companies going bust, leaving patients without care. On the other hand, the proposition's arguments that privatisation would lead to improved quality of care for patients, greater efficiency and cost savings could be considered a weak argument, as it was not supported by any evidence. I could not believe it. And then I thought, wow, that's interesting. Here was the AI saying its own arguments were weak. The heat of the moment had now passed, and it was time to reflect. I may have done better in this round, but the AI clearly could have tried harder than it did. And if you're enjoying this video so far, then don't forget to click subscribe and click the bell icon. Now onto the profound implications of this debate, both for the NHS and wider society. As you can see, this debate was intense, and both me and the AI presented valid arguments. For one, it's clear that AIs like ChatGPT are becoming more advanced and are capable of holding their own in a debate with humans. More on that later. But it's also clear that there are pros and cons to the privatisation of the NHS, and it's not a straightforward issue. Keir Starmer has been talking about this lately. He's the Labour Party leader, if you don't know, and he said that he's comfortable with the idea of more private sector involvement in the healthcare system. And that really makes me worry that the UK is making a decision to head towards privatisation far too rashly. One thing to consider is the potential for the profit motive to conflict with the motive to care for patients. Additionally, it's important to think about the regulatory framework and if it would be sufficient to guarantee high quality care in a privatised system. As you can probably tell, I'm very, very anti-privatisation, and so I recognise that I'm biased. So to me, the fact that this AI could argue so eloquently for privatisation, better than many people in the UK could, is very unsettling. So really it's up to you. You can form your own opinion on the matter. But what can we take away from the fact that the AI did so well? Firstly, it's worth noting that ChatGPT is incredibly effective at making convincing arguments quickly, but it's also partly to do with its concise language style that is really difficult even for experienced people to emulate. Some people actually prefer that style of communication when they're listening to somebody because it can be more efficient. What would it mean if people start preferring arguments that are made by an AI to arguments made by a human? Another important point is the power of ChatGPT and other advanced AIs. I think in the wrong hands, this technology has the potential to destabilise our political institutions, and I think it's crucial that we start planning ways to prevent this. For example, in 2021, researchers from Spain and Poland published a study which showed how AI algorithms could be used to influence voting behaviour, which could potentially affect elections. That is just one example of how AI could be used to manipulate public opinion, and it highlights the need for society to be aware of this potential and to ensure that these technologies are used for the betterment of humanity rather than the interests of a select few. But it's not all doom and gloom. ChatGPT could also be a powerful tool for learning how to debate yourself and being coached through the skills of how to think critically and debate well. So if you're interested in doing that, here's a few ways that you could use ChatGPT. You could have a debate with it about a question and try and argue against it, such as I did. You could get ChatGPT to analyse arguments for you, helping you learn which arguments are strong with evidence and reasoning behind it and which arguments are weak. You could get ChatGPT to advise you on how to make your own arguments and counter-arguments stronger and start learning about the principles behind doing that. And potentially, if you're interested in debating ChatGPT yourself, you could play around with the prompts that you're using, trying to get it to make stronger arguments against you or be merciless in how it's deconstructing your own case. Having that will force you to think of better arguments to support your position and also make you more open to changing your mind perhaps about opinions that you have. Now, there's a couple of extras for this video. If you want to access the full transcript of the debate, you can do so in the description below. I'll also share with you some free ChatGPT prompts that you can use to experiment with ChatGPT in the same way that I have here. And if you want a better idea of how to argue back effectively against ChatGPT, then check out this video I made on argument deconstruction, or this one on argument construction. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you want more videos on critical thinking and debating skills. See you in the next video.